feel like anybody that's from here, if you're not reaching back into the actual culture that benefited you at one point in time or whatever, that's kind of lame on your end.
Shout out to Terry, because this is a late entry, but I like this little graph that's in the loan. Can you go to the topic suggestion joint? So if you can see the graph, it says rap versus hip hop. It says the record business on one side, and it says hip hop culture, and it has free, obviously, on the other side. But on the rap side, it says sell records, make hits, create stars, win awards. The hip hop side says be the best lyricist, be socially conscious, preserve the culture, earn respect.
Okay.
Did this come out in 1998?
I don't think so.
Looks like the graphic was made in 1992.
But that's for the logic, Jay Moore. When you see this, you see it stacked up that way. Correct? Incorrect? Could they be fused?
I mean, because I think there have been some great lyricists who've also made hits and sold records who were stars. Are there people that fit completely into that rap side who do not have anything in common with the other side? Yes. But I don't think that, look, I think at one point hip hop really made it seem like if you had money, if you were out here getting a certain level of shine, like you weren't really hip hop. You had to be going state to state in a van and eating, burritos and having T-shirts and having scratch contests in the middle. And that was hip hop.
Right.
And as soon as one of those people cross over, there's a certain fan that'll turn on that person too. I know people who didn't like Common when he started to get a little bit popular because they thought Common belonged to them.
It's like he's quote unquote sold out.
I mean, I don't know if they thought he sold out, but it's like, hey, this is our guy. You can't radio people. You can't have him. People doing Coke commercials and Microsoft commercials. Y'all can't have our guy.
Is it possible to preserve a culture in capitalism?
Oh,
that's the question I would pose.
Mm-hmm. There's a lot of capitalistic companies that put preservatives in their food products.
I mean, he's right.
That's true.
I totally thought he was about to say something. I thought he was about to really do a deep dive into something.
Just real surface level. Surface level, but deep.
Shouts to cornstarch.
Yeah.
Shouts to cornstarch and,
all that stuff to keep it shelf ready, so to speak.
Yeah.
That's a good question, Lone. That's a very good question.
I think there is. I think, it's messed up. There have to be people who, even in a corporate structure, there have to be somebody that care a little bit and say, hey, okay, we're going to make sure. There's always somebody at the top that believes in something artistic.
Right.
Now, that's because they had started at the bottom believing in artistic, and it kind of went away once they got to the top. Now, and it keeps changing places. But then you got the person that might be on the bottom or the middle that cares about it.
Putting the preservatives in.
Until they get to the top. You know what I'm saying? It's a endless cycle. And of course, you're going to get some stuff that is good or preservative free, so to speak. But most of it is going to be junk food because we're in a situation to where it's a business at the end of the day. You know what I'm saying? So,
well, that's what I mean. It's like if the ultimate byline of capitalism is to sell and to make money, and that is the most important thing above all else, then if that ever jumps in the way of preserving the culture, that is going to triumph that, which is really what we see constantly. Yeah. You know what I mean? So I don't know. That was just a random thought that I had. I've always looked at rap as like a part of hip hop. I think
they're kind of one in the same a little bit because it's weird because now they use the term hip hop a lot more freely than they just use rap.
True.
So like even with the TV shows are called like Love and Hip Hop and things of that nature.
Right.
Where the content is more rap versus hip hop. Like if you had a show like back in the day, I'm trying to think, maybe the movie, The Show. That's more the hip hop and rap fusion, so to speak. Yeah. It was both.
That was the Russell
both elements.
One?
Yeah, that's the one that you could view on Bringing Down the Band.
You sure can.
Yeah, it included both elements in it. So you had some backpackers, you had some fly cats rapping, you had some hood cats rapping, or ruckus even. You know what I'm saying? I don't think they ever had anything like visual wise, but some of the projects that they had was mainly hip hop, so to speak, but they included some of the more popular rappers on there as well because they wanted to show that they can rap still. You know what I'm saying? They wanted to know that I can get down with these same cats over here, and I'm respected over here.
So it's
whereas now, I don't think people really care if they're respected on both sides of the coin.
So it's just not necessarily a mutually exclusive thing.
No.
But it can be.
Mm-hmm.
But I've been in conversations with people about,
and also I want to make this distinction just because in this particular thing where it says rap versus hip hop, this isn't rap being versus hip hop. This is trying to showcase that rap is absolutely a different genre than hip hop.
Right.
You're only going to make so much money if you're a graffiti writer. Okay. And that's when we're talking about we're getting to hip hop. If you're still, dedicated to the dance aspect, the breaking, you're not going, there's not going to be a welcoming vibe into the corporate structure for these elements.
Right, unless you are dancing for one of these NBA teams or something.
Well, yeah. Then you can say, okay, well, how can we make a little money off this? But by and large, it's. I mean, just like maybe there'll be somebody that comes along and gives you a shoe deal or a hamburger deal after the Olympics, and now that breakdancing is in the Olympics.
Mm-hmm.
But by and large, the rap component of it, the rap component of hip hop, is where corporate interests lie.
Right. Correct.
And and you talked about the preservation. There are certain albums that are out of print now, and there's no clamoring for them to bring these albums. And sometimes they do show back up. And I know a lot of people don't know this record. Ice Cube had an artist named �K𝐂𝐃.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I remember �K𝐂𝐃.
And
he had a song on
the Friday soundtrack.
Yep.
For the Freshest MC. I thought that project was dope. For a long time, that CD cost like $100 because it was completely out of print and you couldn't stream it.
Mm-hmm.
Like you can stream it now. And I think the only reason somebody said, hey, maybe we should make this available is because we can make some money off of the nostalgia now.
Right.
When it was just
100 is a lot.
Yeah, and there's still CD. I tell people, if you're going to preserve any of your physical media, as far as your CDs, do not let go of your soundtracks, because those soundtracks
the hardest to find.
Are so tied up in with so many different artists from different record labels, and some people are not motivated. Like, you still can't stream Raphael Sadiq's "Ask of You." The preservation part of it, I think now in the streaming era, people trying to preserve this music, I think there's more of an emphasis on that, because for a long time it's like, why would we put this music back into print and try to sell it when nobody bought it in the first place? Now I think there is a way, it's like, oh, maybe through nostalgia we can try to sell this album we had no real value in. So I think that, but of course that comes back to capitalism, because your motivation for preserving certain pieces of art comes down to you thinking you can make some money off of it.
Now it's a record store day release.
Yeah.
And it's limited quantity, and you got to hurry up and get it before they pretty much take it out of print again for another record store release.
But at least at that point, it kind of exists to some degree. So it's an interesting balance there, I think. So if you ever go to if you ever getting your Gary Vee on and you're going to garage sales, look for them soundtracks.
Yeah.
True. The hip hop rap conversation is triggering sometimes. Confuses me because on one hand, I've heard people say, man, don't nobody want to hear that hip hop, blah, blah, blah. Nobody wants to hear that. And in the same token, they'll say they want to be respected by the people that are quote unquote on that side because they feel like they should be mentioned with hip hop. And it's always been confusing with the two, because I've just heard people say, don't nobody want to hear that like when you say real hip hop, to me, I've been in conversations multiple times where that's a trigger word. That triggers people.
Triggers me too. Like,
do you see what I'm saying?
What are you saying? Real hip hop.
Exactly. I've heard, because when you put the real on it, it's almost like you're downing the other half, right? That the other half is not, whatever.
Yeah,
I think there are two pockets for sure.
I definitely see in our comments a lot of times, because we tend to get an older crowd a lot of times that listen to us, and there's definitely a rap versus hip hop crowd that listens to us that would definitely make the argument that they are two different things. So.
Well, because I said something on stage and I had this conversation with just a few people this weekend. During our, I guess you would call it almost like a mini festival. I said one of the things that makes me so happy about the Indianapolis scene is, at one point when I first got here, I just felt like there were a lot of people just begging, going up to the radio station and being like, why don't y'all play our music? Why don't you do this? Because they were still thinking of, if they could just get their song played one time, somebody will show up and sign them and they'll sell 1 million records. To where now I feel like Indianapolis has its own hip hop economy. We have MCs that have their own studios, have their own retail stores. Shout out to Maxie.
Shout out to Maxie.
podcasts.
Have their own podcast, that have,
shout out to us.
Yeah, exactly.
Thank you.
And we have, like I said, we have a hip hop festival here.
True.
Being from St. Louis, I love my city. We don't have a hip hop festival in St. Louis.
Right.
There's no hip hop festival in a bigger city like Chicago.
You wouldn't even work in Chicago.
Yeah, I said this on stage and somebody was, not too much on Chicago. Because I said, that sounds dangerous as hell.
Yeah.
Hip hop festival in Chicago.
I ain't going.
But, like I said, we have our own economy here because people stop begging and asking for people to do things for them, and they start to do things for themselves.
Yeah.
And so, I think that's a very, for lack of a better term, that's a very hip hop thing that this city has done to create its own economy, because I'm not saying we didn't want to, because that'd be great if we had one of those people that just broke through and became a national act, but we weren't trying to break into the rap industry. We were trying to create a hip hop economy here, and that's what's happened.
Yeah. I think
it kind of was by default too, because trying to break into it, it's almost like we had to rely on each other to kind of help try to boost it. So a lot of the people from the same areas created the hip hop festival, so to speak, and included everybody else in it. And so in a sense, it's hip hop creating its own capitalism in our city because people are eating off of it. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, so I was so happy when we went from the era where
that'd be socialism.
I felt like y'all got to stop going up to whatever the radio station was at the time and bothering Brian Wallace and DJ Rec One and asking them to play your record a couple times. Like, it's just not going to happen. Do something, And I feel like everybody just got the message and decided.
No, I don't think so.
Well,
because every once in a while it comes back up.
It goes back to Terry's point about there being multiple scenes here too.
That's true.
Yeah.
And maybe it's just I'm more involved in the scene that says, why are we going to go up there? They're not going to play our records. Let's create our own.
We're very much a part of one scene in Indianapolis.
Right.
Not to say that we don't know people on the other side, because I do know people over there, and I know we probably all do to some degree. But like, there's an entire other economy that's kind of going on in Indianapolis on the other side, which is very interesting. But
at least it's its own economy. As opposed to
begging for handouts and all that.
Remember when we talked about how shout to Dame Dash, but and the words and him having kind words to say about Indiana and as a whole. But I mean, don't get me wrong, it'd been nice if you came and said that in 1999 or 2005. But right now, we moving in our own direction
or at least
in a
be
real
hip
way
to both sides of the coin. Like anybody that even and shout out to Dame Dash for even doing that. But
true,
I feel like anybody that's from here, if you're not reaching back into the actual culture that benefited you at one point in time or whatever, that's kind of lame on your end. You know what I'm saying? Because you came from it, but you're not reaching back into it.
Yeah,
and it's different. It's different than just popping out here and there, but not actually doing the groundwork to go see certain artists, to go see people perform, to ask questions about who's trending, who are the people that are bringing them in, or all that. Those are questions that need to be asked if you're truly trying to invest in where you came from.
Exactly.
Instead of just surface visits, clout chasing visits, because that does nothing for the ecosystem that we're talking about. It does nothing. When you clout chase and just pop in the city, take a photo, and then do an interview and leave, that does nothing for all of the artists that we're talking about right now that actually could use some of your expertise or some of your connections. They're right here in front of you. Why wouldn't you go back and ask them?
Or even the people that decided, there are artists that have kind of made it reasonably big without even investing in their local community as such. One of those artists, I could make the argument, opened up for Lil Wayne this weekend. He didn't really, I'll just say his name, I don't really care, 𝐀𝐁𝐎. He's a decent artist, and he did his own thing, and you could say he represents Indiana, but he doesn't really represent Indianapolis and the hip hop culture in Indianapolis.
Those are two different things.
Yeah, definitely. Like he really didn't immerse himself in the culture of Indianapolis hip hop. Now that doesn't mean that some of us don't know who he is,
right?
You know what I mean? But in that aspect, he didn't. If we're looking back at this rap versus hip hop graph, he kind of went on the rap side instead of
absolutely.
You know what I mean?
Side.
And so that's kind of the difference in that aspect as well. And then when you're a white artist, you're going to get it even more for doing that because you didn't.
Or even not even rap. You can almost. And rap has a lot of subcategories. It's almost the commerce side of things.
Yeah.
To where.
Well, that's essentially what that is, though. Yeah. I mean, the record business.
I guess so. Yeah.
But, and again, that's not even really a shot at him. per se. It's just kind of showcasing the difference in approaches from different people.
I actually think that's a fair. What you said is a fair assessment.
Yeah,
I think it's a fair assessment.
If 𝐀𝐁𝐄𝐏, just using you as an example because that's just what you are. But if let's say he came up within the culture of Indianapolis hip hop that he could have, and then he also reaches the heights that he reaches, and then he comes back, then he's going to get the same love that he gets back, and it's going to make us that much better as a city, as opposed to what you were saying, Mike, just kind of popping in whenever you pop in, doing your thing, and then going, that's a part of building a culture. That's a part of building a culture.
Yeah, I think he's similar to like a Mark Battles. Mark Battles started out with Monkey Boy essentially, and then I don't know what happened with that, but we all know the Mark Battle stories.
He did the same thing, so essentially. So, two different strokes. One builds the culture within where you're from, and the other one doesn't really. So, I think that's pretty much when people talk negatively about either of these two artists. That's really where it's rooted from.
That's where it's coming from. Yeah,
it's just like, well, you didn't really invest in where you're from.
I don't think you said anything that's a shot per se or anything. It's just much success to him though. I ain't got no reason to hate.
It isn't about them. It's just about rapping hip hop.
It's about the structure of
rapping
the way
hip hop.
things work.